live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.
Benny Ricciardi is here to break down the day's betting board for you.
Let's go, Jerry. Go!
Taking a first look at the day's bets, it's time for the FTN Betting Show.
Welcome to the FTN Betscast for Thursday, July 7th here at FTN Bets and sponsored by our friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper is the fastest growing fantasy platform today with millions of players, and now you can win on Sleeper by playing in their new over-under game. It's super simple to play. So first, in any sport, you're going to choose two or more players that you like and pick whether they're going to go over or under their listed total. So, for example, tonight in baseball could be the number of hits, the number of strikeouts a pitcher gets, the number of runs a guy scores. Then you're going to choose an amount of money you want to enter into the contest. And if you pick correctly, you could win anywhere from 2 times your money all the way up to 20 times your money if you go 5 out of 5 and get them all correct. But the main reason I'm excited about this new over-under game on Sleeper, it's the only app where you can join with all your buddies and play together. It has a built-in group chat where you can see what I'm playing, I can see what you're playing, and we can all see what the guy who won 3 or 4 days in a row is playing. And it's insanely fun when everybody is riding out the same things together and rooting for the same things to happen. So stop what you're doing now, download the Sleeper app to play in the new over-under game, have some fun with your friends, and make a little money in the process. On your mobile phone, you can join our listener group on Sleeper at sleeper.com/FTN bets, and Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. Again, go to the description in this podcast. You'll see sleeper.com/FTN bets, and you get a $100 match on your first deposit. There are terms and conditions that apply, so see Sleeper's terms of use for those details. Last show, we finished up with the NFC East. We've now done the NFC East and the AFC East, and now we're going to move on to the NFC South. I actually had to call an audible today because I was going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we'll probably talk about tomorrow. But the big news of yesterday was the trade of Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers for a late-round pick and a little bit of cash consideration. I think they're splitting the salary of Baker Mayfield this year. That's obviously going to change some things around here for the Carolina Panthers. Now, remember, the Panthers made a big deal the year before to bring in Sam Darnold as their quarterback after having, Teddy Bridgewater the year before who got hurt, and the year before that it was Cam Newton. So they've kind of bounced around quarterbacks over the last couple of years, and it still looks like they don't have anything settled here. Everything that we're hearing about this trade is that it's going to be an open competition to see who the starter is between that year's number 1 overall pick in Baker Mayfield and the number 3 overall pick that same year in Sam Darnold. So we'll see how that plays out here. You know, it's funny. I was looking at some of the, some of the props this morning when I did this, and normally we talk about the player props last, but I wanted to talk about this first here. They took both Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield passing yardage props off the board. Because, again, we don't know who is going to wind up being the starter there. Maybe it's going to be Baker. Maybe Darnold beats him out. We really, really don't know. But from everything that we're reading, it's looking like Carolina wants to have an open competition. It's not like they got Baker and are now looking to shop Sam Darnold somewhere. You know, maybe there's a trade that comes up. Maybe somebody gets hurt in the preseason. Maybe something happens. You know, maybe one of those teams like, maybe it's Seahawks or something who don't really have a settled quarterback there would be interested. But as of now, it looks like both guys are going to be kept there. So I think until they announce a starter, we're probably not going to get any over-unders on passing yardage props or passing touchdown props or, anything along those lines with these two guys, because one of them is probably going to start the season on the bench. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. Anyway, Carolina last year, 5-12 record. Christian McCaffrey played less than half the games in that season. He's their number 1 weapon last year. He's the number 1 weapon every year, really. But again, as long as he's not playing games, it's not going to be positive for the team. He played only 3 games in 2020, played just 7 games last year in 2021. They need him to be healthy and play a full season here. And again, the way people are drafting him in fantasy this year, he's going in the top, pretty much the top 4 or 5 in every draft that I've been in so far this year. So, again, he's going to have to stay healthy to live up to that. But I guess a lot of people are thinking he can stay healthy because they're taking him up there. Remember, when this guy is healthy, he is one of the best all-around players in the NFL, not only running the ball, but also catching the ball out of the backfield. So a lot of things to think about here for the Carolina Panthers. A lot of question marks for the Carolina Panthers as well going into this season. let's see. Jeff Ratcliffe has them projected for 5.9 wins this year in his win total projections that came out right after the schedules were released. You can check that out over at FTN Bets. Just go to Google, type in, Jeff Ratcliffe, FTN Bets win total projections, and it'll bring you right to that page. You can see Jeff's projections for all the teams here based on his model. And, like I said, the Carolina Panthers, only 5.9 wins is what he has them projected for. They won just 5 games last year. Now, I say all that because we're going to get into what the books have them at here. Carolina Panthers win total 6.5 on most of the books that are out there in the market. There are a couple 7.5s too, but let's talk about the 6.5s first. Best price you can get on 6.5 wins is plus 105 on DraftKings, FanDuel, and BetMGM. At plus 105, they're giving them a 48.8% chance of going over 6.5 wins at that plus 105 payout. So I don't think it's crazy, but obviously that is a little bit higher than the projection that Jeff has for them. So the under would be the way that we would be looking here. The under is actually juiced up a little bit at minus 125. DraftKings, FanDuel, MGM, PointsBet all have it at minus 125 for the under right there. 55.5% implied probability at minus 125. Again, that is the way to go. It is the way that it is. At minus 125, though, there's not really a ton of value there. So, I'm probably going to be avoiding this. But if I did have to make a bet, it would be on that under 6.5 wins for the Carolina Panthers. The 7.5 wins is what you can get them on Unibet, BetRivers, and Sugar House. That is paying plus 230. So they need to get to 8 wins in order for that to happen. We have them projected under 6, so I'm not interested really in that at all. You can look at the under there, but the under over there is, it's giving them like a 75% chance to be under 7.5 wins. It's paying minus 305 is the best price you can get. Unibet, Sugar House, BetRivers all have it at that same minus 305 price. Again, I mean, is it likely to happen? Yes. Is it worth it to bet if you have to lay $305 to win 100? Probably not. So I'm going to be avoiding this one here, but I do like the under on the Carolina Panthers win total. I like the under at 6.5, so I definitely like it at 7.5. Let's see, to make the playoffs. The yes to make the playoffs, 450, 460 is the high price here. MGM has it at 450, but Unibet, Sugar House, and BetRivers have it plus 460 for the Carolina Panthers to make the playoffs. Here's the problem I have with that, right? I mean, we talked about this with some of the other teams. Last year there were the teams that snuck into the final playoff spot all had at least 9 wins. There were teams that had 9 wins that didn't make the playoffs. We're projecting them for 6 wins. We don't think they can even get above that 6 wins to get to 7 or 8, let alone 9 or 10, which is what they would probably need to guarantee a playoff spot. So I just don't see any way that this could happen. The books kind of agree with me. So do the bettors. The no on will they make the playoffs is minus 500 on DraftKings. At that number, it's basically an 83% implied probability, so an 83% chance that they do not make the playoffs. And honestly, I think that's probably right. It might even be a little bit higher than that. This is not a good team. I think they do get a little bit better with Baker Mayfield, but we'll have to see. I mean, listen, Baker was hurt last year, so I think he's actually a better quarterback than we saw. Sam Darnold is just, again, as a Jets fan, I can tell you I watch this guy a lot. I'm just incredibly unimpressed. He was such a big prospect coming out of college, and honestly, maybe it was the Jets, maybe being in the Jets organization for a couple of years, and the coaching that he had when he was first over there is the reason. But this guy is just not a good NFL quarterback at the moment. There's nothing else to say about it. If he was a good NFL quarterback, then they wouldn't have went and traded for Baker Mayfield the other day. So. Again, this is probably going to be an open competition. I would not be shocked if Sam Darnold is the backup quarterback here. I would also not be shocked if they do get an offer from somebody and decide to trade him. But as of now, I mean, really, what are you going to say about these guys? The minus 500 is the way to play it. Is there any value in it? No, not really. I'm not taking a number at minus 500, just like I'm not taking under 7.5 wins at minus 305. You don't make money gambling by taking really, really, really short prices on things. So I am not going to go that route, but I would bet the no. I would bet the unders. I just don't think Carolina is going to have a very good season here. So we can talk about Carolina to win some trophies, but I don't think they're going to wind up winning any of them this year. Let's see. The NFC South, Carolina is 10-1 plus 1,000. DraftKings, PointsBet, MGM, Caesar, Sugar House, BetRivers, Unibet, all have them there at that plus 1,000 number, that 10-1 number. FanDuel is the low number for them to win the NFC South, and that's plus 950. So again, 9.5 to 1 instead of 10 to 1. So it's not like you're getting a massive discount there. But again, if you are going to play this, avoid playing it on FanDuel. You can play it on basically any other book and get 10 to 1 instead of 9.5 to 1. They are third in the NFC South in terms of projections here. Tampa Bay projected to win this division and win it pretty easily. They are, minus 300. I think the low number on them is like minus 285 on Sugar House and Bet Rivers. They're minus 300 on DraftKings and MGM for Tampa Bay to win the NFC South. The Saints are the second shortest price there, and the Saints are even a big number compared to, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm minus 300. You're basically saying Tampa Bay's got like a 75% chance to win the division. At plus 375, plus 450, you're basically giving the Saints like a 15% chance or so to be the team that wins the division. The one thing I will say about Carolina is at least they're not the shortest price to win the division. That belongs to the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are as low as 30 to 1 on Caesars, as high as 20 to 1 on MGM. So, I mean, you're talking like a 3 or 4% chance is all that they're getting there. And again, at 10 to 1, you're looking at like a 9 or 10% chance for this Carolina Panthers team to be the one to win the division. Again, I don't think they're going to get to 8 wins, so I don't think 8 wins is going to be enough to win any division in football this year. So I'm not betting on the Carolina Panthers. I'm staying completely away from them. I don't think they have what it takes to get it done here. So if I don't think they can win the NFC South, I definitely don't think they can win the NFC overall. Neither do a lot of bettors out there. MGM has them at 66 to 1 plus 6,600. That's the high number in the market. 50 to 1 is kind of the consensus number in the market. FanDuel, PointsBet, Sugar House, Bet Rivers all have them at 50 to 1 here. 50 to 1, a little less than a 2% chance for them to win it all, and not even to win it all. We're not even talking Super Bowl here. We're just talking the NFC. Less than a 2% chance for them to win the NFC. That's probably about the right number there. They would need a massive turnaround in order to even really be able to compete here. For the Super Bowl, the big number, DraftKings, 130 to 1, plus 13,000 on the Carolina Panthers to win it all. Again, tough to win the Super Bowl if you can't even project the team to be 500 in a 17-game season. We're projecting them a couple wins under 500, like 4 or 5. So, really it would take just a massive surprise for this to be the team that comes up. Baker Mayfield would have to come in and play like, I don't know, Joe Montana and DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey would have to stay healthy and have huge seasons, and the defense would have to take a big step forward. It's just so many things that would need to happen for this team to be good and be in contention, and I don't think they're going to get them all fixed in 1 year. So, again, if you're interested, if you're a Carolina fan, if you want to take a shot, 130 to 1 plus 1,300 on DraftKings. The low number for them is still 100 to 1 plus 10,000 on FanDuel, PointsBet, and Caesars. But again, DraftKings the best place to play them if you're interested in taking a Carolina Panthers Super Bowl future. I am not going to be putting any money on that. I don't think that's something that's going to pay off. So now we can go on and talk about some of the player props. There's not a ton of player props to talk about here. Again, we talked about Sam Darnold versus Baker Mayfield. The Sam Darnold passing yardage numbers have come off the board now with the Baker Mayfield trade. And I don't know if, Baker's numbers are off the board as well now that he's on a new team. So, again, if you locked in something with Baker, you got to check out if your books are going to honor that number. That number might be if he was the Cleveland quarterback or something. We don't know who's going to be the starter here. Until we know who's going to be the starter, we're probably not going to see any props out there for the quarterbacks. So we don't really have to talk about those guys here, but I wouldn't be interested in taking any MVP awards or most passer yards or any of that stuff with either one of these guys anyway. So probably best to just leave it for now. Christian McCaffrey has a bunch of interesting numbers here, so let's talk about them all. Again, the last 2 years, this guy played just 3 and 7 games, so obviously he underperformed expectations. But the 2 seasons before that, right, 2018, rushed for over 1,000 yards, had over 800 receiving yards. I think he finished just shy of 2,000 total yards, scored 13 touchdowns. Really good numbers, right? 2019, he did even better. He became one of just 3 players in NFL history, along with Roger Craig and Marshall Faulk, to have 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving in the same year. I think he had about 2,400 total yards in that season, scored 19 total touchdowns. I mean, just absolutely dominant when this guy is out there on the field. And then he played 3 games in 2020, played 7 games in 2021, and half of those games he was banged up and wasn't 100% anyway. We haven't seen a healthy Christian McCaffrey in over 2 years right now. Can he get back to those numbers? I mean, listen, the guy was one of the most talented players in football before he started having the injury bug hit him. He was a guy that people were drafting pretty much as a consensus #1 overall pick, and a lot of things that were going on in fantasy football and stuff like that. He was a guy that was one of the highest priced on DraftKings week in and week out on FanDuel, just absolutely crushing the daily fantasy scene. So yes, a healthy Christian McCaffrey is an absolute stud. And as much as they try to say it, they say it every year, oh, we're going to try to limit him a little bit. We're not going to try to give him that big workload. But when they're in close games and when things are on the line, whether it's passing the ball, whether it's them passing the ball, whether it's them running the ball, Christian McCaffrey is the best weapon they have, and he always winds up on the field. So again, this is a guy who, when healthy, if he can stay healthy, can put up the kind of numbers that would put him in the conversation for things like MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year since he's coming off an injury, most rushing yard. Like he has the ability to be up there in all of these stats. So let's take a look at all of them and see if we can find some good numbers here. Offensive Player of the Year number for Christian McCaffrey, plus 2,500, 25-1 on FanDuel is the high number for Offensive Player of the Year. It's as low as 16-1 or plus 1,600 on DraftKings there. Again, a healthy Christian McCaffrey, 2019, had 1,300 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving, scored 19 touchdowns. Those are numbers that would put him in the conversation for Offensive Player of the Year. So if this guy can stay healthy, getting him at 25-1 on FanDuel, I think it's a decent bet to make there. I don't hate Christian McCaffrey, Offensive Player of the Year, plus 2,500 on FanDuel. That's one of those bets that I think I'm going to put in the bet tracker when I'm done doing this podcast here. Let's see. Comeback Player of the Year. This is one I definitely think he could win. And we do have a little bit of a spread here on, the numbers that are being offered. You can get him at 10-1 to be the Comeback Player of the Year over at MGM. I think those are really good odds on him at 10-1, plus 1,000 to be the Comeback Player of the Year. Plus 700 is what he is on FanDuel. Again, if this guy plays 16 games, the only 2 times in his career and the last 2 times in his career, we saw him play 16 games. He finished with 1,900 and 2,400 total yards. Again, he holds the record for most catches for a running back in one game. He's the fastest guy to get to 1,000 yards rushing and 500 yards receiving. He can score double-digit touchdowns when he plays a full season pretty easily, as he's done it both times that he has played a full season. I mean, he can get double-digit touchdowns rushing and also add a handful of them receiving as well with the, rate of receptions that he gets too. This guy is just an absolute stud. So, again, 10-1 Comeback Player of the Year. I don't think that's a crazy number. I like that a little bit as well. So that's another one that I'd be putting a couple shekels on here. Again, MGM has it at 10-1. Every other book has it below that. FanDuel is the low at 7-1. So you're getting, 300 basis points by going over to MGM and playing this over there instead. Christian McCaffrey, Comeback Player of the Year, like that at 10-1. Another one for Christian McCaffrey here, most rushing yards, plus 4,000 on FanDuel, as low as plus 3,000 on BetRivers, SugarHouse, and Unibet. This is one that I'm probably going to avoid. I mean, like I said, I'd rather put my money on Comeback Player of the Year or Offensive Player of the Year than most rushing yards. And the reason for that is, yes, Christian McCaffrey is a good running back and will get a lot of rushing yards if he stays healthy for 16 games. I would assume he's going to be over 1,000, which we'll talk about in a minute here for a reason. If he stays healthy, I would assume he comes over 1,000. But, can he lead the league in rushing? Absolutely. I'm not saying he can't. But I just think playing him as the Offensive Player of the Year, or my favorite bet, the Comeback Player of the Year, is probably the better way to go about it. Because really what you're betting on is he going to stay healthy? And if he does stay healthy, he could have a monster season, not win the rushing title, but still wind up winning the Offensive Player of the Year and crushing in the voting for Comeback Player of the Year. So I just think those two are going to be a little easier to cash than the rushing one, because, again, this is a guy that could see 100 targets. He could have 80 catches for 1,000 yards again. Like, that's well within the realm of possibilities for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, based on the way that he plays and based on the way that they use him in this offense. So, again, he's probably not going to get the 350 carries that some of these other backs may get that are, basically the workhorses like a JT or like a Derrick Henry if he stays healthy. But he'll have that many touches. So that's why I'd rather play him for the Offensive Player of the Year than the rushing yards, even though the rushing yards, and that's also why the Offensive Player of the Year is actually a cheaper payout than the rushing yards. You're only getting 25-1 on Offensive Player of the Year. 40-1 is the number on FanDuel that you're getting for him to have the most rushing yards. So, again, I just think it's more likely that you're going to cash that one, so I like that better. If you want to play him for most rushing yards, again, 40-1 is a good price for a guy that does have the ability to do it. And at 40-1, they're saying he has a 2 to 3% chance to do it. My guess is his percent chance of leading the league in rushing is probably better than 2 or 3%. So I do think there's value there at 40-1. And remember, it's 30-1 on a lot of the other sites. So, we're getting a little bit of a value there, about 1,000 basis points better than if we would have played it on like Bet Rivers or Sugar House or Unibet or something like that. As a side note too, another interesting number I saw out there, FanDuel has him at 101 to lead the league in receiving yards, only 60-1 on DraftKings to lead the league in receiving yards. Now, again, is it likely that it's going to happen? No, but at 100-1, I mean, the guy, it's a less than a 1% chance at 100-1. I do think he has higher than a 1% chance to lead the league in receiving yards. I mean, again, if they're going to be 5-12 again or 6-11, they're probably going to be trailing in a lot of these games. So, he has a chance to get a couple 100-yard games. And, again, this is a guy who I think he had 15 catches one game out of the backfield, which is an NFL record. You get a couple 15 catch games for 100 and something yards. That's going to add up pretty quick. So, I don't think it's crazy to think Christian McCaffrey could be a guy that leads the league in receiving. Again, am I throwing a big bet on this? No. But if you got like one of those free $5 bets or something, and, you're looking for something to do with it, there are worse ways to take a shot in the dark here than getting 100-1 odds on a guy who may, have 100 and something targets and get close to 100 catches this year. So let's see. The last thing I want to talk about with Christian McCaffrey here, total rushing yards, 905, over under -112. Really, and this is really just a bet on whether or not he stays healthy. The 2 years that he played 16 games, and remember, they play 17 games now, but the 2 years that he was healthy and played 16 games, he rushed for over 1,000 yards in both those seasons. He had 1,080, I think, in 2018. 2019, he had 1,300, something like 1,360, 1,350. I forget the exact number, but, again, both seasons where he played the full season, he crushed 900 rushing yards. The last 2 seasons, he came nowhere near, but again, he played 3 games one year, he played 7 games the other year. If you get 17 games out of Christian McCaffrey, he's going to get over this 900 yards. Now, I don't like playing a lot of overs here because when you play the overs, like, you look back historically, it's like 60-70% of these things wind up going under, of these season-long things. And a big reason for it is the injuries, right? Like, people don't factor in the injuries. In order for a guy to get 1,000 yards or, something like that, everything has to go right. Like, the offense has to be, he has to not lose snaps to other players. He has to stay healthy for an entire season, which, as we all know as football fans, is not an easy thing for these players to do. Violent collisions all the time, guys. Even if a guy just gets like banged up a little bit, that could affect the number of yards that they have or the number of snaps that they're playing or something like that. And in order for him to get over this number, I mean, he's probably going to have to play 15, 16 games maybe in order to get over this number. Again, could he do it in like 10 games? Yeah, I think he had 1,000 yards rushing in 10 games in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So, he could do it if he's playing only half a season or so, but that's really what you're betting on. If you get a healthy Christian McCaffrey for 17 games, he's going over 900 yards rushing. Without a doubt in my mind. I don't even think it's a problem. He'll get over 60 yards a game on average. He'll have a game where he gets 120 or 140 yards because he's got that kind of breakaway speed where he's going to break something for 60 or 70 one of these games. It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. But is it also going to be an injury? Because, again, if he gets hurt in game 4 or game 7, even like he did, a couple of these recent seasons playing 7 games or less, you're not going to get over 1,000 yards in 7 games. You would really, really have to be like ripping off like $150 a game in order to get there if you're only going to play like 6 or 7 games this year. So that's really what you're doing here. You're betting on whether or not Christian McCaffrey stays healthy. Like I said, this is a good number because if he does stay healthy, he's going to go over this number. If he gets injured, though, he could go under it again. He got injured each of the last 2 years. Maybe finally variance is going to be on the right side and he's going to stay healthy. So I like the over here. FanDuel has it at -112. I would be more inclined to bet the over on Christian McCaffrey rushing yards than I would be to bet on the under. But I don't want to bet on him to have the most rushing yards in the league because, again, like I said, probably not super likely to happen. The other player prop I guess we can really discuss right now is going to be their number 1 receiver, which is DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a guy that I think people sleep on a little bit here. He has over 1,100 yards in 3 straight seasons here. And listen to the quarterbacks that have been throwing him the ball during that time. Cam Newton, who's, again, with his arm, not a great quarterback. Kyle Allen, Teddy Bridgewater, P.J. Walker, Sam Darnold, Will Greer. Like, these are the guys who have been throwing passes to DJ Moore. And somehow he still winds up with 1,100 plus yards each of the last 3 seasons. The guy is an absolute stud. I hate to say this, but I think he's the new Allen Robinson, right? Allen Robinson got out of that crappy quarterback carousel situation in Chicago. And now I think DJ Moore is that guy who's just an absolute stud that could put up even better numbers if you actually put him with a competent quarterback. We'll have to see if Sam Darnold beats out Baker Mayfield or Baker beats out Sam. Sam would have to play a lot better than he did last year. Baker would also have to play a lot better than he did last year. But again, Baker has some excuses because, he was fighting through injuries right there, which is why I don't know why the Cleveland fans hate him so much. But, whatever. We'll see what happens here. Hopefully Baker Mayfield bounces back. Baker Mayfield could wind up being the best quarterback that DJ Moore has had thrown to him, had balls thrown to him by pretty much in his entire career here. So, maybe he can go over that 1,100 yards. Again, though, everything has to go right. Like the quarterback situation has to get better. He has to stay healthy. He's been lucky enough to stay healthy the last couple of years. Again, not always an easy thing to do. But DJ Moore is a true bowler. Like this guy can absolutely play. The lean would be to the over here, except I hate taking overs on these. As I told you guys, 60-70% of these things usually end up under. So really, we should be leaning more towards the under on some of these. But again, Christian McCaffrey over, DJ Moore over. I think one of those two things happens. If you want to take McCaffrey over rushing yards, DJ Moore over passing yards, I'm receiving yards. I mean, wouldn't really be anything that I'd be all that upset about. So there you go. That's going to wrap it up for today's edition of the FTN Betscast, talking about the Carolina Panthers betting preview here on FTN Bets. Make sure you check out all the other podcasts that have come out. Again, we did the whole AFC East already. We did the whole NFC East already. We're starting on the NFC South today, and sometime by the beginning of August, we'll have all the teams in the NFL done so you guys can have a preview, a betting preview, know where all the numbers are for everybody there. And we'll update those for you over on FTN Bets. Remember, right now, you can still get a discount on the best price that we have to offer at FTN Bets, FTN Daily, or FTN Fantasy, whatever you're looking to play this fantasy football season. For those season-long guys with drafts coming up, check out FTN Fantasy. For those of you like me who are going to be on DraftKings and FanDuel and Sleeper and Prize Picks and all of our partners there, you guys should be over on FTN Daily. And then for all you guys that are going to be with me betting on the sports books, FTN Bets is the place for you. And here's the trick. You ready? Use promo code BENNY, BENNY, and you can save 20% off any package on any one of those sites, whether you're doing the yearly package or the monthly package. The promo code works the same way. Once again, promo code BENNY, BENNY, saves you that 20% off. And definitely make sure to get down in the description and join our Sleeper group so that you can get that $100 deposit bonus match from Sleeper HQ. And that is going to wrap it up for today's edition of the FTN Betscast here at FTN Bets, sponsored by our friends at Sleeper. Good luck today, everybody.
Live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.